Hmm? Ah!
You wish to confess your crimes?
Yes, milady. I do, milady.
Sky cells always break them. Speak, imp. Meet your gods as an honest man.
Where do I begin, my lords and ladies? I am a vile man. I confess it. My crimes and sins are beyond counting. I have lied and cheated, gambled and whored. I'm not particularly good at violence, but I'm good at convincing others to do violence for me. You want specifics, I suppose? When I was 7, I saw a servant girl bathing in the river. I stole her robe, and she was forced to return to the castle, naked and in tears. If I close my eyes, I can still see her tits bouncing. When I was 10, I stuffed my uncle's boots with goat shit. When confronted with my crime, I blamed a squire. Poor boy was flogged, and I escaped justice. When I was 12, I milked my eel into a pot of turtle stew. I flogged the one-eyed snake. I skinned my sausage. I made the bald man cry. Into the turtle stew, which I do believe my sister ate. At least I hope she did. I once brought a jackass and a honeycomb into a brothel.
Silence! What happened next?
Hey everybody, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Duncan.
And I'm Kristen.
And this is Game of Microphones, episode 48. So good to have you back, Kristen.
Yay! I'm excited to be back too.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation. I'm sure we'll get to talk about some really cool stuff. You ready to just jump right in?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I am.
All right, let's do it. Top 5 highlights of Game of Thrones Season 1, Episode 6, A Golden Crown.
What did you think of this episode?
I love this episode. It's a classic for sure. You know,
Yes.
Lots of great stuff happens. Our first Tyrion trial by combat, Viserys' death, his timely death, you could say. So much good stuff. What do you think?
I loved it. I love a lot of season 1. This is kind of the beginning of the end of Ned, I think, this episode. And it's getting harder to watch. Like every time he's on the screen, I'm just like, don't do it. Just go to Winterfell. What are you doing? So
I strip him of all ranks and titles and summon Tywin Lannister to court.
And meanwhile, Littlefinger in the background is like twirling his mustache.
And he's just totally setting up Ned to have to do something by making the specific comments that he's making and shutting down Pycelle at every opportunity in that conversation.
Oh,
Great.
There's another guy I hate. That guy his end in this series was just so satisfying. So
Getting stabbed to death by all the little kids.
it was awesome.
So brutal. So it's interesting. In one of these episodes, we get a little clip where he's in with some whore, Pycelle, that is, and talking about the thing about kings, and they go on this whole conversation or monologue, and at the end he kind of trails off, and she's like, so the thing about kings, and he kind of forgets what they're talking about, and she leaves, and he kind of like stretches out, and then he looks all limber, and he's kind of like jumping around a little bit. We never get any payoff for that. Remember that?
That's true. I do. It's funny because I always think about that particular scene whenever I see him, especially in these early episodes, because you don't know that about him yet. And you just think that he's just this senile old man who just says things, like your racist grandfather or something.
Yeah.
And then you realize, oh, this guy is really sneaky. He's terrible. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
He's powerful.
I hate him too. I hate the whole small council. I'm using the word hate a lot in the beginning right now here.
At least you love the episode, though.
Yes.
So what's your number 5?
It would probably be what I called the heart-eating prophecy.
Oh, all right.
And I wrote down everything that Jorah said. And he said a couple of interesting things to Viserys. You know, first of all, it's such a weird scene. You know, you're kind of thrown into this ritual that the Dothraki are doing with Daenerys, and you're kind of wondering why on earth she's sitting there, and why is there blood on her face, and why is everybody chanting, and
why is she in the middle of the crowd? What's going on?
Right. It was just really strange. But then you kind of understand as the scene unfolds a little bit. And Jorah, you know, it's nice to have somebody as stupid as Viserys there so that Jorah can mansplain it to him.
Isn't it only mansplaining if you're talking to a woman, though?
Yeah, I didn't stutter.
Ooh, Harry Lloyd's coming for you after that.
Viserys is more of a woman than Daenerys.
I plead the 5th.
So anyways, he said that his enemies will cower before him and their wives will weep tears of blood. She's going to have a boy. And he said, well, he won't be a true Targaryen. He won't be a true dragon, which is interesting because where we are now, you know, if there is a baby that's had between Jon and Dany, that would be, a
right.
true dragon and a true Targaryen.
Wow.
And then the next thing that Jorah says is the stallion who mounts the world. The stallion is the Khal of Khals. He shall unite the people into a single Khalasar, and all of the people of the world will be his herd, which is kind of what Daenerys is doing right now.
Totally.
She's united all of the Khals. She's united them with, the second sons, even though they're not there, and the Unsullied. And then she started gathering houses in Westeros. And now with the unification between her and the North, it sets up even more that she could, in fact, eventually have the stallion who mounts the world and unites the people.
Right. And if the dragon has 3 heads, then all 3 heads are doing their part to unite the world Khalasar, you could say. The head in the north, Jon Snow, is united the wildlings and the northern houses. Tyrion is going to hopefully help unite the Lannisters and the Targaryens.
Right.
So,
all against, one common enemy in the end. But and then at the very end, Jorah says she truly is a queen today, instead of and he didn't say Khaleesi, even though he calls her Khaleesi. She's known as a Khaleesi. He still called her a queen. So I just thought that whole prophecy was just really interesting right off the bat.
Totally. Really good read on that whole thing. My number, is that it for your number 5?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. Mine plays into it, so we'll go right into mine. Mine is Badass Dany. and and she's just such a badass throughout this whole episode. But in that scene, she's eating this whole monstrous heart. Imagine doing that.
No.
And just having the intestinal fortitude to hold that down and complete that task. It's a pretty monstrous idea because the heart is like really tough muscle. It's got to just be horrible eating through all those arteries and everything. Yeah, and it's raw. And I watched the episode, and then as I was putting together the agenda for the podcast and my my top 5, I put the episode on repeat with the audio commentary, and got some cool insight about these scenes. For example, when Emilia Clarke was prepping for the scene, they told her that the heart was going to taste like gummy bears, basically. So she's like, oh God, like, how am I going to do this acting where I'm going to have to make it seem like it's gross? It tastes gross when I have a huge sweet tooth and I love gummy bears. I'm just going to be smiling. And then it turned out that it actually did taste really gross. So she didn't have to act.
Whatever they filled with into it. And then that was actually the episode in the shoot that I don't know if you've ever heard the story about her getting stuck on a toilet.
Oh, from the stickiness of the blood.
Yeah, and she couldn't get anybody to help her. And so she was stuck on the toilet for like 20 to 30 minutes or something crazy like that because of the dried blood all over her.
Classic. Yeah, so the audio commentary was her. It was one of the two, Dave or Dan. Harry Lloyd, right, and Tyrion Dinklage. And Harry Lloyd is such a whiny, like, feminine, just junk human on the TV show, Viserys. But Harry Lloyd seems like just the most chill, laid back, like intellectual, cool dude around. He seems like the leader of the crew almost when you're listening to the audio commentary. So it's interesting to see him being such a like the opposite of a leader on the TV show, but seeming like he's actually like the head of what's going on almost in person in real life. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, there's so many badass Dany moments in this. We start off with her, first of all, playing with a dragon egg. I think it's Drogon's egg, specifically, next to a smoldering brazier.
I really appreciate that they're color-coded.
Yeah, totally.
I saw the green one, and I'm like, oh, just leave it.
Just wait a few years, yeah. So she picks up the Drogon's egg and places it onto the burning embers, coals, and it almost seems like she's in a trance. Like she isn't conscious of what she's doing necessarily, but to me it seemed like she was one with the forces of the universe and one with destiny, and she just knew what she needed to do instinctively. Mm-hmm. And it's a really powerful moment, like sort of like the blank, just serene expression on her face, and she places the egg and settles in next to it and is just watching it in peace. And right as she leans over to pick up the roasting egg, Jiqui, or one of her servants, handmaidens, walks in and exclaims, "Khaleesi!" as she grabs the egg, and she picks it up, and Jiqui kind of like scoops it out of her hands and dumps it onto the brazier, and immediately, before caring for herself, reaches for Khaleesi's hands and sees that they're perfectly fine, and then she pulls her hands back and sees that they're just horribly burned with all the little scaly egg marks all over her hands. And she's just, Dany's, she responds in sort of still in her trance, it seems like, "You're hurt," and Jiqui just has nothing to say. Just at a total loss for words, as Dany is entirely unharmed. She's just so badass. And they pointed out in the audio commentary that she's wearing one of her original Targaryen robes for this scene. Now that she's becoming more of a powerful, dragon. Like a powerful person, and she's being ingrained as in the Khalasar as their Khaleesi, and she's sort of representing her heritage at this point proudly, and representing the Targaryens, and just it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have all of that written down as well. I have a question mark about why she was in the drapey robe when she's been in the Dothraki wear for so long, and then I saw that her handmaiden was coming in with fresh clothes for her, so I was wondering if maybe she was like bathing or something, and that's just like what she was wrapped in, but it probably was set up for what she was about to do with the eggs. Right,
yeah, that's what they were saying on the audio commentary. Good catch. I hadn't even noticed the change in wardrobe or anything like that, so.
I'm obsessed. I never care about costumes except for with this show.
I know, the costumes are amazing on this show.
Love the evolution of the costumes in this world, but, it's interesting because this is the second time that we've seen that she's not burnt.
Right.
The first time being in, I think, the first or second episode.
First scene we see her in the pilot episode.
Right, when she steps into the tub.
After she gets the brotherly nipple pinch.
Gross.
Yeah.
I'm even happier that he's dead.
I know, right? It was funny, too, hearing them, like the actor and actress, Harry Lloyd and Emilia Clarke, sort of discussing that initial scene in the audio commentary, too. Because they're not actually brother and sister, so it didn't seem awkward or anything for them. But as a listener, I'm like, oh my God, this is so weird.
Right. Well, it's a nod to how well that they do in their roles. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. So it goes from that scene to the next scene we talked about with her eating the horse heart. But that's just such a badass scene. The prince is riding. I've heard the thunder of his hoofs. Swift as the wind he rides. His enemies will cower before him.
That's the same lady that does that prophecy that we see later, correct?
Which prophecy?
The prophecy, the one who's, chanting and shouting out, everything that Jorah was deciphering or translating to Viserys, the woman who was making the songs and everything like that. So
you mean Miri Mazdur?
Yes, thank you.
Different lady. I think this lady may be the lady that's at the Dosh Colleen.
That's what I'm talking about.
7,
that
or
woman.
Season 6. Oh, okay. I thought you meant the one that did the
when she
birth
has to
ritual.
go back and she has to be with all of the
right. Yeah,
the widows, and she was talking to that woman. Who was like kind of their leader.
Yeah, I think that's
it looked
probably
like the same
person.
actress.
That's good. If it is, good job bringing her back into the fold. It makes sense. She seems to be the head ex-Khaleesi at this point here, so perfect.
Yeah, it ties it together, which is nice.
Yeah, I had thought you were referring to Miri Mazdur, the lamb, the lady of the lamb people, the Meiji.
Oh, who killed Khal Drogo?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, so that's just a super badass scene, and at the end of that, Dany stands up in the middle. A prince rides inside me, and he shall be called Rhaego, and everybody just loving her, and they start chanting Rhaego, and Drogo comes and picks her up, and they have like a magical connection with their eyes where they're just smiling at each other, and they're great together. And Jorah, as you said, or Viserys kind of goes, they love her, and Jorah says, she truly is a queen today, and then turns and Viserys is gone, and we'll talk about that at my next point. But then
if you want to go right into that when you're done, we can.
Sure. That's my number 4 is Viserys' character progression in this story too, so we can jump into that after. But we get to the next scene with Dany, and it's at Viserys' death scene. And she's, laughing, having a good time. Viserys comes in drunk, ends up with his sword at her belly, right? And she's so badass. She's stoic. She doesn't blink or miss a beat. She stays perfectly calm. She's not crying. She's not freaking out, And then when Drogo sort of tricks Viserys into taking his sword away, she's looking right at him and tells him, Drogo says he'll give you the crown, a crown that men will tremble to behold, And she's just so badass. She's really become a powerful person at this point in the series. Even before the dragons are born, she's stepped into her own, and it's great to see her leave behind the meek Dany of old, the slave, the younger sister who's living in the shadow of a snake. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what you got anything to say about Dany in this scene?
I was just like totally daydreaming about that whole relationship with Dany and Drogo, just because what you're saying is totally true. I think that realizing that she could be an equal with her partner, with Drogo,
right?
I think that really helped her kind of come into her own and realize that, how much she had to offer after being beaten down by Viserys for so long.
Yeah, the first time she could be an equal to anybody.
Right. And I think that once, he comes in, and as she strengthens, he realizes how weak he really is, and how dependent on her he has become.
Yeah, totally dependent. She's got the eggs, she's got the army, everything
she's
that
got
he
everything.
wants to love.
Right, right. And, she's such a badass, and I love the arc of her character, but, I think that it would be, that it would be a negative not to, acknowledge that Drogo had a huge part to do with that, with her her coming into her own.
Yeah, his strength just passed right into her.
Right.
The Khal of Khals, like the most badass Khal they've had in generations. And yeah.
Taken out by an infected boo-boo.
Yeah, sadly. It's a real issue though, and wound infection is a dangerous thing in real life.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that the show addressed that in this case, and in the case with Robert. You know, his wound was much more serious, but it shows how even a seemingly minor wound can be really dangerous.
Yeah, and I mean, you can even go so far as to say that, you know, Ned being wounded by Jaime took a lot out of him in the end. You know?
Yeah. Interestingly, while they were filming this, I guess a flu was going around on the set of the show, and Sean Bean actually got the flu, so he is legit sick.
So he's actually like feverish during that first scene.
Yeah, which is hilarious. Just thought that was a funny little tidbit to add in. But yeah, the final moment that just solidifies how strong Dany is in this world now at this point is, you know, Jorah comes over and tells her, "Look away, Khaleesi." She refuses. She won't look away. She's going to watch everything that happens to Viserys as it unfolds, and she stays strong. You know, once he threatens her unborn kid, it's obvious that family means nothing to him. You know, loyalty, honor, morals mean nothing to Viserys, so he's got to go, basically.
Well, yeah, and I had it written down as a side note that you can tell how little he cares about everything around him, and just how narrow his scope is, just in how he handles the eggs versus how Dany handles the eggs.
Right.
You know, Dany handles them with this loving touch and with this extreme care, whereas, you know, Viserys, he grabs them, he shoves them in a bag, he drops them to the side before he storms out.
He just drops the whole bag with the eggs like clinking off each other and everything.
Right.
Dick.
He's decided that, you know, he doesn't see that maybe the eggs, you know, could be a power play or something to treasure or something to hang on to. He wants his big army and his ship to go over to Westeros for what? You know?
Yeah,
I mean,
what?
and it's crazy to me that he believes that, you know, people are waiting for this 5-year-old to come back.
Seriously. Yeah, Dany saw right through that, so good for her.
Yeah.
Yeah, really cool. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up my number 5. She just, you know, solidifies it. He was no dragon. Fire cannot kill the dragon. Such a badass line.
That is such a great line. That's one of my favorite lines that she says, because she realizes, I think, in that moment that she is the dragon.
Yeah, she didn't
and
know.
I think that she didn't want to look away because she was genuinely interested to see if it was going to affect him.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't considered that angle to that line. I think you're probably right. And yeah, when she sees it, she realizes that how different they really are. It's interesting. She's got the strength of character and the dragon strength, and he has neither. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, she was born under the Red Star. But she I had a thought because I was rewatching it last night, and I had a thought. If she got poured with that molten, I don't think it would have done anything to her.
May have just been hard to get off.
Because she has like a permanent helmet now. She's like, I'm ready for battle at all times.
Except it's gold, so it's like terrible armor. You know, it can be punctured easily and everything. Gold's really soft.
But you'd know when she was coming.
Oh yeah, you should see the sun shining off her from a beacon as she's riding on her dragon.
On a really hot day, she can mold it into like a dragon shape if she wants to.
That's hilarious. Yeah, what's your number 4?
My number 4 is Tyrion's confession and trial.
All right. Love it.
So,
it's my number 3,
my first thought off the bat with this poor guy is that he's just always accused of crimes that he didn't commit.
Always.
And for always calling him a half man and an imp and somebody that's just not worth a damn, they're really like, everybody really wants to call him a murderer or a schemer or a planner or something like that.
From the moment he's born, he's accused of killing his mother, which isn't his fault.
Right.
You know? None of it's his fault.
He never really gets I don't know. He just never gets a fair shake at anything.
Yeah. Not even human form.
Right, I know, poor guy. But I do like it how Bronn is kind of won over by Tyrion in his confession. You know,
Yes.
He just sits there and he's listening. And I think that seeing the type of person that Tyrion was, you know, Bronn was like, okay, yeah, I'm going to roll the dice on this guy. And,
He's like,
and
yeah, I
I'm gonna
like this guy. You know, he's worth risking my life for in hopes of gold. You know, not only is there gold, but this guy seems worthy of my service, my saving. It's great.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was really funny. I forget, who was it? I forget if it was Liza that was like, enough, or if Tyrion was done or something, but Robin's like, what happened next? I'm like, gosh, you're such a weirdo.
Yeah, he's so weird.
But I think the most interesting part of this whole confession and his trial and just how the events laid out was kind of watching Catelyn the whole time. I think she slowly realizes that Tyrion dying would be a really, really terrible thing.
Yeah, she's realizing how badly she kind of screwed up.
And she's kind of powerless in this entire situation. And Liza, who we find out later is the one that actually killed her husband. I don't understand the game she's playing right now by trying to get Tyrion to die for some crime that she's drudging up. You know, it was just really interesting to me how
maybe if she could pin it on Tyrion, and then Tyrion's executed, then there would be no one to argue against whoever it would be pinned on anyway. You know, like so Tyrion's being blamed by Cat for the death or attempted murder of Bran, and then Lysa's like, "Oh, this is a great opportunity. He can be my scapegoat because if he's going to die anyway,
right? Then
we can just get that out of the way." Maybe.
Yeah. But you know, I see that, and I think that that's such a good that's a really, really good point. I just don't understand why Kat didn't just interject and say, you know what, this guy's my prisoner. I'm going to take him back to King's Landing or Winterfell or wherever it is that I'm going to go. Yeah, because I just, you know, the more you see the scene, the more you realize, okay, we know what's happening in King's Landing. We know that there is this feud happening between the Starks and the Lannisters over Tyrion's capture. Catelyn is a smart woman. I think at this point she realizes that her sister's crazy. Her nephew is... I have no words for what he is. I haven't found the right word.
Oh, man.
He makes me uncomfortable. How's that?
Yeah, that's great.
And she's realizing that she's put this entire thing into the wrong place, the wrong hands. Just everything has completely gone out of control for her. So I'm wondering if there was a sense of relief for her when Bronn ended up being the winner.
Possibly. I mean, she did see him on the East Road, just brutalizing everybody in his path. So she may have expected that he would win, or at least, thought that it was possible.
Right.
What a great, oh man, Tyrion's... This is my number 3, so we'll just combine here.
Okay.
Yeah, Tyrion's whole story in this episode is amazing. First of all, waking up, just dangling over the edge of the sky cell.
Oh, gosh, I could feel it. I could feel it. I physically feel it.
I forgot about that. So I'm watching, and I'm like, oh my God, right. This is amazing. And the look in his face when he kind of opens his eyes and realizes where he is.
Oh my God.
Mord! And he's yelling for Mord. And Mord shows up, and this guy is fucking awesome, man. I love Mord. I am Team Mord all the way. He's telling him that, I'm a Lannister, I've got gold, if you could help me, then I will owe you gold. And he's like, no gold. And he's like, well, of course I don't have it here. No gold, fuck off. And Mord runs off. But I think I've seen an interview with this guy, and he seems like a normal dude, but he's really good at playing just like this guy who looks really, really touched, really dumb.
Yeah. Like maybe he was at Liza's breast a little too long too, you know?
Yeah, or maybe he like fell partway from the Eyrie onto his head.
From the moon door.
Yeah, at some point. And he's got this great scar that just goes all the way down his face. Like, he's been through some shit. He's hit his head a few times. I love this guy. He's great. So he finally gets Mord to come back, and he's trying to explain the gold thing to him, and he has the complete wrong approach trying to talk to Mord about this. He gets intellectual, which is the opposite direction he needs to go, and sometimes possession is an abstract concept. To Mord, you think Mord understands what possession means, or
the guy who hasn't said a complete sentence since we first met him? Yeah,
or if he can even conceptualize the idea of an abstract concept itself, you know. So as soon as Tyrion says that, and you just see this dumb look on Mord's face, I'm just dying laughing. It's one of my favorite interactions of the entire show. Right there, and Mord just smacks him with the little club he's got as a response.
That club is awesome. I hope he got to take it home and keep it forever.
Yeah, and during the audio commentary, Harry Lloyd, who played Viserys, is like, "Oh, what's Mord's dildo made of that he's holding there?" Which cracked me up. So finally he gets to him, I am a Lannister. If you've heard the phrase, rich as a Lannister, of course you have. You're a smart man, talking to Mord. And they also say Lannisters always pay their debts. So if you pass a message along to me, from me to Liza, I will owe you a debt. I will owe you gold, and he's just kind of like, oh. You can see it, the concept sort of hitting him and him realizing what's going on. And he asks, what message? Tell her I wish to confess my crimes, which is amazing.
I'm so glad that he kept that message short, because when he said what message, I go, oh, Tyrion, what are you going to do?
I know.
What are you going to say?
This is a horrible game of telephone. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She just comes up and she goes, I could just see him just looking at Liza being like, I'm going to get gold.
Yeah, yeah.
That's it.
Or he wants to confess to the murder.
Yeah.
Like, no, I said my crimes, not the murder. So he finally goes up there and starts doing the confessing, and he confesses to stealing a maiden's clothes from the river and and watching as her boobs are bouncing all over the place, and confesses to milking his eel into the turtle stew, which his sister then ate, or at least he hopes so, and the audience is a mixed reaction of revulsion and laughter.
At least I hope she ate it.
Tyrion. It's so great. Yeah.
Because then I know that would be both of my brothers.
Oh, jeez.
Hey, hey-o.
I hadn't even thought about that. That's crazy. You're gross, Kristen. You're gross.
I loved, I didn't mention this before, but I loved it. I put a note about the fight between Bronn and Sir Mortem or whatever his
Sir
name
Vardis.
is. I wrote it down.
Sir Vardis Egan.
Yeah. That Bronn was just bobbing and weaving the whole time. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with Floyd Mayweather, but that's how he wins boxing matches.
Interesting. Yeah, I've never really seen Floyd fight. I'm more familiar with the
You've seen
Muhammad
it.
Ali
It was Bronn in this
like
episode.
Nice. I love Bronn, so yeah, I probably would like Floyd too. Yeah, he's a pretty small guy. Imagine, he's all over the place. This interaction, this fight, is also compared to the Rumble in the Jungle with Muhammad Ali and George Foreman in Zaire, 1974, where the concept of the rope-a-dope was sort of brought into existence by Ali, who just let he kind of like ran around a lot and had Foreman chasing him and wearing himself out. He let Foreman hit him a lot, which is something Bronn didn't do, obviously, here.
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Yeah, so George Foreman ends up wearing himself out physically, and Ali is just aggravating by grabbing his head and saying, I thought you hit harder, George, and everything like that. And he just trained himself to absorb all this punishment. So eventually, Foreman is worn out, and Ollie just lays the smackdown on him, and there's nothing much he can do. And it's the same thing here. Sir Vardis is just, in wearing 50 pounds of plate armor. I mean, a typical armor set could weigh 50, 60 pounds. You want it to be light in places where it's not needed, like not as you're not as likely to be hit, and thicker in places where you're going to be hit. But this armor looks really heavy. It looks thick. It's almost like studded all over the place, like diamond plating or something. It looks like it's heavy armor. So it's not surprising that he wears himself out pretty quickly while Bran is gallivanting around, jumping over railings and
knocking over candles, throwing people in front of him.
Yeah, and hiding behind pillars and whatnot. This guy learned to fight in the streets. It's really cool to watch. And so eventually, he trips him and drops him right in front of the moon door, and it kind of reminded me of the gladiatorial tradition where before you execute somebody, you wait for a response from the ruler, whoever is watching over the gladiatorial games, and they give a thumbs down if they want the person to be killed, or a thumbs up if they want him to live, or opposite of that, or one or the other. But he's kind of waiting for the reaction, and they don't tell him to back off, so he executes him and drops him through the moon door. Super, super, super vicious death here.
Yeah,
wow.
Oh man, when he dropped that sword like right into the top of his shoulder, and then you see all that like red blood gush out over the armor.
Yeah, and he really puts that sword
was
deep.
A lot.
Yeah, it was a whole lot. A lot of blood. And Sir Vardis, I mean, we haven't really seen him do anything to deserve this necessarily, so it's like, wow, this guy Bran is willing to do what, he's killed.
Well,
he's a killer.
and he didn't volunteer.
Right.
he was standing in the back of the room.
He didn't volunteer when he thought he would have to fight Tyrion, but once Bran stepped up, he did sort of volunteer. He said, I would happily fight this man, But yeah, he didn't volunteer. You're right. Which is an interesting dynamic to this whole thing. And another funny part is while everybody is doing their, Tyrion does a confession. He demands a trial by combat. Before he demands a champion, all these people are like, I'll fight for you, Liza, out of loyalty to your husband and my love for you and the Vale. And all these people are like stepping up, trying to fight. And in the middle of all that chaos, Sweet Robin steps up, make the Batman fly!
Oh, gosh.
And then, sits back down, and you can see him, as he's sitting, it took all this exertion to stand up and make that exclamation. It's
with his
great
wand.
Acting.
Did you see that he had a wand in his hand?
Oh snap! I did not even see that. That is hilarious.
He's waving around a wand like he's decided he's a wizard or something.
He's a conductor, conducting the symphony of
he's
Tyrion's death.
The kid makes me uncomfortable from start to finish.
I love it. That's so funny. Oh man, so, yeah, just a great scene. And I think my favorite part of the whole thing is after Vardis drops down the moon hole and Liza says, you don't fight with honor, and Bran responds, no, he did. Great response by Bran. But then Tyrion comes up and reaches his hand out to Sir Roderick, and he's like, you got my money, bitch, basically. And he tosses down his bag of gold. And as Tyrion's walking out, he doesn't even open it to pick out the silver or anything. He just tosses the whole bag to Mord.
I hope Mord left.
He didn't. We see him in the future, and he's got some gold teeth. So he definitely kept the gold. He's a simple man, he doesn't need much. He just wants some gold teeth.
I needed to chew better.
Yeah, he likes being the turnkey, I guess. So. Good for him. He's got money. He's doing what he wants. He's up in this badass palace. He's living the life. Go Mord.
Yeah.
He deserves it,
Yeah, I would agree with that. Unfortunately, that place is never that we see, because John Aaron's already dead by the time this show starts, this story starts. But the Eyrie is just never held by a sane person.
Yeah, not while we're in witness, really.
I wonder who's going to hold it now.
Now that Peter's out of the picture, that leaves Sweet Robin being the Lord of the Vale.
Great.
And if somebody else is going to sort of rule until he comes of age, I imagine it would be Bronze Jan. Because I don't see Jon taking Winterfell from Sansa anytime soon. Being a blood relative, Sansa could theoretically take over the Vale in the meantime. Potentially. I don't know. Yeah, what do you think? Got any ideas for that?
I don't know, but that's interesting that you said Sansa was a blood relative, which means that with Arya and her fighting capabilities, she could take the Vale with the Knights of the Vale behind her.
Oh wow, that would be really interesting. Yeah. I also like Bronn's choice of words when he steps up for Tyrion there. I'll stand for the dwarf,
Yeah.
which is pretty good.
Did you know I was reading the wiki for this episode, and I don't know if it was said in the commentary or not, because I read, the cliff notes of the commentary, but they talked about during that fight scene that Bronn actually fell through the moon door during one of the takes.
That's so funny. I didn't know that. In the commentary, I did hear them mention that they had a bunch of foam blocks down there in case anybody fell in. But there's only so far you could fall, so it wasn't like a real danger. But that is hilarious. Bronn fell in.
Yeah. I thought that was hilarious. I would love to see outtakes of that
me
scene.
Too.
The whole thing from start to finish.
Definitely. Yeah. People seem to be impressed with how Jerome Flynn performed that scene as well. Yeah, I could not imagine Bronn being cast better than Jerome Flynn.
Yeah.
That guy is epic.
Like I've said before, it's just nice that, to see Bronn without all of his guy liner that he has today.
True. Yeah, now that you're mentioning it, that scene where he's aiming the scorpion at Drogon, I could sort of see the guy liner in my head now.
Oh yeah, that's where it's like Drogo thick.
Yeah, totally. So that pretty much wraps up my number 3. Anything else you want to say about Tyrion this episode or that scene or anything like that?
I don't think so. Just that the bromance has begun.
Oh, okay. I think there's one more thing we should add that we sort of glazed over is the introduction of the moon door in general, which is just what a cool device, right?
Yeah, but you don't want to be drinking in that room ever.
Yeah. We have no executioner in the Vale, or in the Eyrie. Life is more elegant here.
Elegant, yeah, unless you're walking. But I want to know, okay, what is below it? Where are they falling into? Are they falling into people, water?
I think that below is just rocks. Because in the books, they mention, I think Lysa's talking about the effects. Some bodies fall into, turn into a bunch of pieces. They just separate into all these little body parts when they hit the rocks below. Some just bounce. And they're sort
Gross.
of make a study of observing the way that the bodies react to the 600-foot fall to the rocks below.
Oh, okay. So it's scientific.
Yeah, it's scientific. But the reference to life being more elegant here, do you think that's a Star Wars reference?
From what? Now I'm embarrassed. From what?
I think Obi-Wan mentions that the blasters are... Yeah, he's talking with Han Solo or something. And he mentions blasters being too dirty or whatever, and that Jedi weapon is the lightsaber, which is more elegant, which is interesting. So sort of similar thing.
I'm completely blanking on this. I totally believe you, and I'm pretty sure my daughter's going to take away my Star Wars card when she, schools me on this later. But
which reminds me, I have something here for you.
I went back and found the clip from episode 4.
Your father wanted you to have this when you were old enough, but your uncle wouldn't allow it. He feared you might follow old Obi-Wan on some damn fool idealistic crusade like your father did.
Sir, if you'll not be needing me, I'll close down for a while.
Sure, go ahead. What is it?
Your father's lightsaber. This is the weapon of a Jedi Knight. Not as clumsy or random as a blaster. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age. For over 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. Before the Dark Times. before the Empire.
Before the long night. Seems like we might have quite a few parallels between Star Wars and Game of Thrones. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up my number 3. When I sort of skipped, my number 3 turned into my number 4 there. So what's your number 3?
My number 3 is Ned holding court.
All right. Fun.
So I think there's a lot that happens in this scene, right? A lot of what, I think of as kind of the beginning of the end for Ned. A lot of people will think that it's him coming out of, the brothel and, his men getting run down and killed and whatnot. But this is where he actually takes action. He makes a big decree. He does it in front of everybody. He orders Tywin Lannister to come to King's Landing, which we haven't met Tywin Lannister yet, but I think we're all pretty sure that this is a formidable person to be demanding things from.
Absolutely.
But
Robert says in this episode that he's half a kingdom in debt to Tywin Lannister. So he's someone that you don't want to cross, or at least Robert is not even willing to attempt to cross.
Right. Well,
As king.
Robert's not willing to do a lot of what he's supposed to do, but he really likes saying he's king. I started making tally marks.
For how many times he says he's king?
Yeah, I think he did it 3 times alone in this episode.
That's hilarious.
But what I found the kind of cool was that we see Beric Dondarrion for the first time.
Right, and a different actor.
Okay, good. I'm glad that you said that was a different actor, because he's a little weathered now. And so I'm looking at him and I said, is this the same guy? I said, maybe. I mean, he has like one eye now and he's been killed a lot, so who knows? But
yeah, he was recast in season 2 or 3 when he makes his next appearance.
Okay. But Ned is the one that kind of unofficially forms the Brotherhood Without Banners.
Yeah, totally. This decree, to send these guys off to hunt down the mountain and give him the king's justice, sentences him to death, straight up. This is the formation of the crew here.
So what I'm wondering is why, the Mountain is a vile person and he's got some anger problems, but I just don't think that he would have the fortitude, not the fortitude, what's the ambition or the motivation to get a bunch of people together and go around, taking down villages and killing people. And so I'm wondering, do we know if Tywin is the one that sent him? Is that why Tywin is being summoned? Because maybe Ned knows that Tywin's trying to start some crap with the Starks? Like, I can't get a hold on.
That's the assumption, is that Tywin, or that the Mountain is one of Tywin's bannermen, and that based on Catelyn's action of seizing the Imp, that the Lannister family is reacting by raiding villages that are under the protection of House Tully.
Right.
So
with the
that's
fish.
At its face, that's what Ned assumes is going on here, and he basically wants Tywin to answer for the actions of his bannermen, to claim he had no involvement or come out with the truth. But if he doesn't show up within a fortnight, he's branded an enemy of the crown and a traitor to the realm, which is hardcore.
Yeah. Well, and why did he do that? Because Littlefinger goaded him into it? Did he do that because he was defending his wife's honor? Did he do it because he was trying to do something for the realm? I think
it's a bit of all the above, honestly.
Right.
I think that he may have been hesitant to make such a drastic move if Littlefinger hadn't articulated the severity of Tywin's potential actions there and really shut down Pycelle as he was trying to mediate the conversation and temper their reaction. And once once Pycelle like had no response to Littlefinger, I think that Ned was sort of influenced into acting on his wife's behalf and making a move against the Lannisters. So I think that a little bit of D, all of the above for every reason you suggested there, I think is accurate.
Right. Well, yeah, you're probably right. It's just, I don't know. The whole thing is interesting to me. I mean, watching Littlefinger, this is my third time through the series during this rewatch for the podcast. And
nice.
And so, my second time through the series, I remember I paid a lot of attention to Varys. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that he orchestrated a lot of the houses coming together for Daenerys at the end of season 6. And now that we're at the end of season 7, I'm going back and I'm watching Littlefinger closely now that I know his entire story arc. So, I feel like I pick up a lot more Littlefinger than I have in the previous 2 times.
Cool.
Going through the series.
I love Littlefinger, man.
He's an interesting character.
He really is. What do you think about Aidan Gillen's accent? Littlefinger's accent throughout the series?
You mean the fact that that him and Daryl Dixon share a lot of the same throaty capabilities as the seasons go on?
Oh, interesting. I've never really picked up on that before. That's cool.
So I'm watching The Wire right now, and
he's in that too, right?
He is, and he's in season 3, and I'm only in season 4, but he's also in season 4, and he has an American accent. So
interesting.
It's really interesting because I'm going back and forth between The Wire and Game of Thrones, and every once in a while I'll watch like season 7 Game of Thrones, and then I'll come back and do season 1. For this rewatch. So I'm getting a lot of different voices from the guy right now.
That's cool.
So it's interesting to me that I think that he's really good at what he does. But
Aidan Gillen, you mean?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. And I love his accent. I think he's Irish.
I think so, yeah.
And in the beginning, he's just, I don't know, he's just the snaky car salesman kind of guy where you're just kind of like, I don't know much about you, but I'm pretty sure I hate you. And then as the seasons go on, you sit there and he sounds more and more sinister, more and more devious, almost like he's kind of slipping more comfortably into this role as manipulator and as puppet master for all these different moving parts. Whereas in the beginning, I think he had to kind of hide his hand a little bit more
until all the pieces were moving
further in status.
Right. Yeah. And he sort of is able to step up into his own more as soon as Robert's gone and Ned's gone and all these powerful people are sort of removed, leaving a vacuum where all these other people that are sort of trying to step up and be bigger players of influence in the new power structure. It's pretty interesting how that all plays out.
Yeah, what do you think of his accent? That's
I love it. I've heard people say that they felt that Littlefinger's accent has been sort of inconsistent over the years, and there's one moment where I heard that when they're talking about sending a knife to kill Dany at the small council meeting a couple episodes back. You can hear it on the intro clip for Game of Microphones for that episode. But he says, what do you do when you find yourself in bed with an ugly woman? You get on with it and whatever. And then he says, slit her throat and be done with it. And when he says slit her throat, it feels like he's like sort of slipped out of his Littlefinger accent into like just like an American accent almost, or something. That's the only time I've ever heard any questionable accent work there. Otherwise, I think he does a great job. I love Littlefinger's sort of slimy delivery and the way he sounds. His voice even sounds sneaky. You know what I mean? It's really cool.
Yeah. It's interesting in this particular scene too, is he's doing like this whisper thing that kids do, where kids are trying to whisper to their parents or to an adult, and they're like, and you're like, dude, everybody can hear you. Like, I don't know why you're whispering. Everybody can hear you.
It's classic. Oh man. Anything else you want to say about this this scene?
Just the ending of the scene. Honestly, it's one of my favorite lines of exchanges of the entire episode when he says, "Gold wins wars, not soldiers."
Then how come Robert is king and not Tywin Lannister?
Right. And it struck me that I didn't understand why Tywin Lannister or the Lannisters at all were even involved with the Baratheons, considering that Tywin Lannister was the hand of the king, of the Mad King, and Jaime Lannister was the King's Guard. Like, I just don't understand how they folded into the Baratheons after being a part of the Targaryens.
It's I think it has to do with the fact that the sacking of King's Landing was largely made possible by Tywin flipping sides from the Targaryen side to the rebellion side. He basically sent word to Aerys that he brought his army to King's Landing, sent word to Mad King Aerys that he wanted to enter the city to help protect them. And as soon as Aerys opened the gates, he, instead of coming in to help protect, he just started attacking. At which point Aerys ordered Jaime, who was by his side, to basically go and return with his father's head. And that was the of the thing that turned Jaime really against the Mad King. And then as soon as everything seemed lost, the Mad King started, saying he wanted to burn them all, and that's when Jaime killed him and the Pyromancer. But Robert's rebellion was largely successful in terms of taking King's Landing because of Tywin's treachery.
Okay.
So he sort of entered
which is why he's half a kingdom in debt to the Lannisters, probably.
Well, the half a kingdom in debt thing is because he owes Tywin 3 million gold dragons. And they also owe 3 million to the Iron Bank of Bravos, which Cersei ends up paying back in season 7.
Right.
But the first time Robert sits on the throne, he owes Tywin a debt by just being able to get to the throne in the first place. So it's sort of Tywin, a
many-headed beast.
It was a treacherous move on Tywin that sort of put Robert in his debt. And I don't think Tywin would want to be king. I think he likes being just outside the picture, ruling from the shadows, sort of.
Yeah, I would agree with that, which is interesting to me that he even took over his hand later from Tyrion, when Tyrion really wasn't doing a terrible job. He was doing a really good job.
Great job. Yeah, I think
all
that
things
it was just
considered. It
was Joffrey's order that Tywin would be the hand, so he just had to show up eventually, I think, and take over. Otherwise, Joffrey would have written to him eventually and said, "I hate the imp. Get your ass over here." I imagine.
Anyways, yeah, that was my number 3, was Ned Holds Court. How about your number 4?
I'll switch that again to my number 2 because my number 1 has to do with Ned and this. So we'll just go right into my number 1 since we're already talking about it, which is Ned going for broke and discovering the truth. So that was my number 2. So yay! Perfect. Yeah. So we sort of talked about him going for broke, but I think that first of all, it's interesting to see Ned sitting on the Iron Throne, because I don't think he's ever sat on the Iron Throne before this moment. When he arrived to the throne room, Jaime Lannister was sitting there, and he made Jaime get up, but I don't think he ever sat there. He never wanted to sit on the throne. So this is some position
they make reference that he had. That had he sat on the Iron Throne, he would have been king.
All he had to do is sit, basically. Right. Yeah, that's what Cersei had said to him. So it's interesting, first of all, just seeing him in this position, which he doesn't want to be in at all, sitting on the throne, which is kind of cool. The man who comes in and is talking about how his village was sacked, I thought it was funny how he referred to Ned as your grace.
Your hand.
Yeah, and Pycelle's like, he's not your grace, the king is off hunting, this is the king's hand, and Pycelle's frustrated just being there and giving this guy an attitude whose whole village was just destroyed. Calm down, Pycelle. So I just thought it was super hardcore that Ned decides to take the action that he did. He charges Beric Dondarrion to bring the king's justice to Sir Gregor, strips him of his titles and sentences him to death, summons Tywin, which is all super hardcore. I just have like, whoa, written down. And then
such a big moment.
Yeah, and then we can just combine here my second half of my number 3 and your number 2, which is Ned discovering the truth. I thought this played out just fantastically. Sansa, Sophie Turner, I think, did such a great job in this scene where they're talking here, and she's saying, "I don't want someone else. I want him." And
that
Arya
was such a good moment.
Arya's laughing at her like she's ridiculous, and he'll be the greatest king that ever was, a golden lion. I'll give him sons with beautiful blonde hair.
And I'm gonna have his golden babies.
Boom! Like the orchestral hit, and Ned kind of looks up, and the realization starts to hit him.
When he says, he's nothing like that drunk fool. He's nothing like his father.
Right. Yeah, Arya's like, the lion's not his sigil, idiot. He's a stag like his father. Which I thought was hilarious. And the way that Sansa delivers this line, she looks at Arya and says, he is not. And then she turns to Ned and looks right in his eyes and says, he's nothing like that old drunk king, and that's like her telling Arya he's not a stag, and confirming that further to Ned himself by saying he's nothing like the king. And Ned is just like, wow, she just, said the truth of it. Like, he's not a stag. That's the thing. That's why Jon Arryn died.
Right. Well, you could say he died because of the golden crown of the kids.
Yeah, exactly. So crazy. How'd you like the revelation there out of the mouths of babes?
Well, I loved it. I'm 100% with you on that one. It was interesting to me of the double entendre of a golden crown being related to these children and what their heads look like, and then Viserys' death, hence the name of the episode, right?
Right, wow.
But, what struck me is that, Sansa says it in season 7, in the finale to Littlefinger, and then it's mentioned before in season 1. I forget by who. I'm not on my A game today, but I forget by who. But that Starks are slow to learn.
Oh yeah, and Littlefinger says that, right? Well,
Sansa says it to Littlefinger in this past season's finale. She says, "I may be slow to learn, but I do learn." And
Littlefinger, right after Ned strangles him outside of his brothel, he says, "Starks, quick tempers, slow minds." Right.
So I think that, this is one of those scenes that kind of explains that, is that Sansa doesn't realize what she's saying, but Ned is slowly realizing 6 episodes in, after being there for a couple of months and, having this investigation at the same time. Now he's learning, oh, this is what Jon Arryn was doing.
Yeah.
So it's funny to me that, the Starks are so good at getting in their own way.
Yeah, it's funny.
So yeah, I like the fact that everybody that this one aspect of one of the show's biggest questions is being answered in this scene.
Definitely. And I also like the way they do it. They don't really spell it out step by step for the audience. They trust us that we're smart enough to figure out what's going on, and that we'll pick up on it eventually, even if we don't really figure it out here. But we know that something important has happened.
And for those viewers that don't pick up on it then, he goes directly to that book in the next scene.
Right.
And,
so good.
Reads it all out. So, I love that. I think it's wonderful. And I love the difference between Sansa and Arya's characters anyways. But, yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. And Sansa, man, Sophie Turner is just so good at playing a spoiled little brat, basically. She's so good at it.
Especially with the septa.
Yeah. Oh, that was just brutal, man. Do you want to see, do you even have hair? She's like, I do. Would you like to see it? She's like, no.
Are you from the north or the south? Well, I just realized I don't care. Ugh.
Sansa, now you're just being rude. So unladylike. and she's usually such a lady. She must be really frustrated over losing Lady, her direwolf, and over what has happened on the King's Road, even a month later or whatever.
I think she's more upset that Joffrey doesn't seem to like her. You know, he's been kind of making terrible faces at her and ignoring her for the whole King's tournament.
Speaking of that, we get this scene where he comes in and he's acting like a proper prince in this episode, which is unnerving.
So did you ever read about how they wanted to do that scene? So there was a lot of talk on how Joffrey should play that scene.
Interesting.
Should it be rude? Should it be standoffish? Should it be manipulative? And the final thought was that it should be sincere, that he's doing what he thinks is right and what he's been told that he's going to have to get on board with. And so they wanted him to be like, listen, you need to be sincere and you need to be as soft as you can for this scene. So I thought it was interesting that it was played in that soft way, because it still made your skin crawl and it still made you hate the guy.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think Jack Gleason just does a phenomenal job as Joffrey. Another great casting.
Yeah, absolutely. I have written down in all caps, what do I have written down? I said, Joffrey makes me want to throw things.
Yeah. I just want to put my thumbs in his eyes, mountain style.
I love that. Yes, I want to put my thumbs in his eyes too.
It crosses out like this.
Let's all do that.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Ned then goes straight to the genealogy book. Oris Baratheon, black of hair. Axel Baratheon, black of hair. Lionel Baratheon, black of hair. Stefan Baratheon, black of hair. Robert Baratheon, black of hair. Joffrey Baratheon, golden hair. And Sean Bean's performance, as usual, stellar. The way he sort of looks up from the book and his eyes are kind of bouncing across the room, and you can see it hitting him, even just solidifying what Sansa had said. It was just really, really good to watch.
Well, especially since he saw Gendry too, and he saw that Gendry was black of hair.
Yeah, totally. Anything else you want to say about the realization or any of that?
No, that's good.
All right.
Are we to our number ones?
We are to my number 2.
Okay, good. My
number 2 is Ario, I'll say, which is the Arya-Syrio combination.
Very nice.
Not to confuse with Ario Hota from Dorne. But these scenes with Arya and Syrio are just really, really special. They're all so good and so strong philosophically, and Syrio's character is just so excellent. And the lessons that he's teaching her are so strong and important, and I can't stress enough how much fun these Arya and Syrio scenes are. Arya is distraught when she arrives. I don't want to practice today. They killed Jory. My father is hurt, and Syrio spins it on her. You're troubled. This is good.
You can use this.
Yeah, you want to practice when you're troubled, because if you're troubled in a real fight, if you're away with your trouble when fighting comes, more trouble for you, right? So you got to practice when you're troubled.
Shake it off.
So yes, you can get in the right mindset and overcome the mental barriers that would prevent you from fighting effectively. And this is the introduction of Arya to the god of death, which is really
not today.
Yeah, really interesting thing, especially considering in the modern context, we have, I can't remember who says it, but the war is between the god of life and the god of death. And Arya, Jon Snow is a champion of life. Daenerys is a champion of life. Arya is a champion of death. Is there going to be some sort of divide in the future between them, considering their allegiances to opposite spectral deities, essentially?
I never thought of that before. That's an interesting thought. I'm going to think about that.
I mean, there's been so much darkness in Arya's story, and her. I mean, she doesn't have like full devotion to the god of death. She didn't fully become nobody. She retained herself and left and broke through the training and stepped out and did her own thing and made up her own mind. But she sort of still adheres to the principles of the god of death. I mean, here Syrio he says, you fear for your father, yes? That is right. Do you pray to the gods? And she responds,
old and the new.
Yeah, the old and the new. He says, there is only one God, and she kind of has this puzzled look, and his name is Death. And there is only one thing we say to death. You know what that is, Kristen?
Not today.
Yes, A+ for you.
Sorry, I was really excited about that.
It's such a great line, and just really interesting concept. It's the god of death could be considered the great other from Melisandre's visions, the god beyond the wall in control of the army of the death. So I wonder if Arya's connection with the god of death, if that would enable her to infiltrate the death god's army, she could potentially get close enough to kill the Night King. Considering her skills that she's picked up with the Faceless Man and her loyalty to the God of Death, both those things combined may allow her to get close. So
I wonder if she would be able to slip into a White Walker.
Yeah, if she could if she takes one of their faces, if she could.
Yeah, I don't know if that's possible because I've seen when they die, they break up into a million pieces, but.
Oh yeah, if they're bone. For sure, if they're like skeletal walkers, definitely, yeah, they sort of...
Or like the two that Jon has killed. I think that they broke into a million pieces at a hard home.
The White Walkers, right. I was thinking Whites,
yeah.
Sorry.
No, yeah, the White... Well, because I don't think that the Whites would be able to get too close to the Night King, but the White Walkers might be able to get close enough.
Ooh, that's a really interesting idea. Oh, man.
But I do like the fact that, I don't know if you noticed, but during that scene when Syrio was monologuing to Arya, that every single time he hit her, it was much like the waif hit her when she was at the House of Black and White.
That's so cool. And
it just goes into, more proof of people such as myself that think that Syrio is Jaqen, is, the many-faced god.
Oh, man, that he is one of them.
Right, that he's a faceless man.
Wow.
So I just thought it was interesting, some of the mannerisms that he had. I don't know if it's picked up by maybe the idea has always been that, and maybe the person who played Jaqen Hagar saw Syrio and picked up that little hitting thing or something, or the waif, or I don't know. So it's just an interesting thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's a couple options. Syrio could have either been taken captive and brought to the Black Cells, at which point he could have become Jaqen. He could have been killed by Meryn Trant. The greatest swordsman in the world, killed by Meryn fucking Trant.
Fucking Trant.
The greatest swordsman in the world didn't have a fucking sword. So yeah, he could have been killed by Meryn. He could have been taken captive, or he could have busted out some crazy faceless man shit and killed Meryn or escaped. He didn't kill Meryn because obviously Arya kills him in season 5 or 6 or whatever.
A very, very satisfying scene.
Very, very brutal and satisfying scene. Wow. Yeah, wow. That's really interesting. I hadn't noticed the similarity between the combat, like the way he hits Arya with the wooden sword, and how the waif did the same thing, and that's really neat. Good catch on that. But Arya is always just getting whooped on, huh?
Yes, but it makes her, the wonderful little assassin serial killer that we know and love today.
Absolutely. Yeah, you gotta get hit a lot until you learn how to hit back, potentially, or how to dodge the hits. Anything else?
That should be stitched on a pillow somewhere, like stretched on a piece of canvas or something.
My awkward phrasing of that.
Yeah, Motivation Monday. You got to know how to take the hits or dodge the hits.
Yeah, well, hey, it goes right back to what we're talking about with the rope-a-dope tactic with Muhammad Ali and Bran.
Oh, yeah, it does.
You know, Muhammad Ali learned to take the hits and withstand the punishment so that he could then spring on his opponent when they're weakened. Bran is a master of this already, dodging and using his agility, which is exactly what Arya is going to have to do and what she does learn to do, as we see when she fights Brienne. It's pretty interesting. All these connections all over the place. Really good. Anything else you want to say about Syrio and Arya before you jump into your number one?
No, how about you? Anything?
I think that pretty much covers it. Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah, go on ahead.
So my number one was actually kind of already covered. It was the Golden Crown scene and Viserys, but
okay, so mine is too, the death of Viserys. Perfect.
Okay, good. I just I feel like we talked a lot about it, but one of the things, one of the main thing that I had was the realization about Daenerys wondering if he was in fact going to get burned, if he in fact was a dragon, if it was a Targaryen thing, or if it was just a Daenerys thing.
Mm-hmm. Just a Daenerys thing.
So, but
that would be good for a T-shirt or something, a pillow. It's just a Daenerys thing.
It's just a Daenerys thing. Yeah, see? We're going to make T-shirts and pillows. It's going to be a thing. But what do you want to say about it?
I wanted to talk a little bit about his whole sort of story this episode and how it leads to his death. And you mentioned before that it's obvious that he doesn't care about anything around him. And that's abundantly apparent through his actions this whole episode. He realizes that Dany isn't getting any love, or that Dany's getting all the love and he's getting none. And instead of having the reaction that a brother would have, or that a normal person would have, being happy for your sibling, he instead takes it personally and leaves. We next see him as he's preparing to steal the eggs from Daenerys, and he's wearing his sword, which Jorah points out is not cool. In Vaes Dothrak, you don't want to be wearing a sword. They don't shed blood there. Weapons are forbade. So he doesn't give a shit about their customs, about their society. All he cares about is getting his army. So it's just, just rubs further in that he really is just a douchebag, doesn't care at all about any of these people. I really liked this interaction, this scene between Jorah and Viserys. Viserys sort of opens up to him a little bit. No one has ever given me what they gave her in that tent. Like all that love. And he says, who can rule without wealth or fear or love? And he gets up to leave with the eggs, and Jorah is not having it, like, at all.
Right.
He tells him, you can leave, but you can't have the eggs. And Viserys responds to him, you swore an oath to me. Does loyalty mean nothing to you? And I really, really like Ian Glenn's delivery of his response, which is, it means everything to me. He's kind of sort of gravelly voice projection of this, where like you can tell that it's true. He is about loyalty. He was trying to be loyal to his wife, which made him sell the poachers as slaves or whatever, trying to get money for his wife. He's pissed off that Viserys is not being loyal to his sister and his family here by taking the eggs. He's being loyal to his Khaleesi by standing up for her. He's being loyal to loyalty itself by standing up against Viserys' non-loyal behavior here, which is really cool.
He's also a traitor in this moment too, though.
Oh to some extent, yeah. I mean, against Viserys, yeah. But I think he's a traitor because
against both of them. I mean, he's still whispering over to Westeros what's going on.
True. Yeah. Good point. Really good point. I had forgotten about that until Karth, right?
Well, I think it's when she almost drinks the wine, whenever that is. I don't think they were in Karth yet.
Can't remember. At one point he says when the last time he sent a message was, I think he says the last message he sent was Karth. But yeah, it may or may not have been before the attempted assassination. Maybe maybe he sent one message after the assassination saying like, "I'm fucking out." You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, it means everything to me, and yet here you stand, Viserys says, and yet here I stand. And Viserys is such a weakling. It's great. We were talking about how he sees how much he relies on Dany, and how seeing how strong Dany has become makes him realize how weak he is, and seeing how much love she gets makes him realize that he doesn't have that, and he's no one will follow him. That he doesn't have the what's required to lead, and he sort of realizes that all of his own talk is bravado, and he's got his sword on him, but he still doesn't try to mess with Jorah. At this scene, instead he drops the eggs carelessly, like you mentioned, which shows how little he cares about anything, and storms out, sword on his hip. But man, what a pussy! You know what I mean? He just totally drops those eggs and doesn't even look at Jorah. Just slinks out like the shadow of the snake that he is.
He's just a child. I mean, it's just like any child where you're like,
Yeah,
no,
true.
you can't take your toys, into the bathroom or something like that. And they just like slam it down on the ground and they stalk out,
Absolutely. And he basically is. He's like Sansa, essentially, a spoiled brat where he's never had anybody to keep him in line for the past 17 years since Robert's Rebellion, essentially. He's been his own sort of god, and the god of his own universe, as people are sucking up to him like Illyrio Mopatis and trying to help him for their own benefit, assuming that he'll remember what they've done for him when he comes into power. But he really has no discipline, no honor, no morals, because he has had no positive guidance in any of these places. He's just been surrounded by yes men, essentially, which is really
that's interesting. He was probably the first time he ever heard no was probably the minute that he lost control of his sister and kind of got left in the dust. Yeah,
and it's definitely hitting him hard. It's hitting him really hard, as we see in the next scene when we arrive back at the party with Dany and everybody's happy and smiling, and he stumbles in wasted. And one of the funny things about this was that
great drunk walk,
right? And Harry Lloyd, the actor, said in the audio commentary that he went on YouTube, and was looking at videos of drunk people walking around. Which is hilarious. And he did it really well. There's one point where he sort of holds out the sword and takes a step backwards and stumbles, and he looks legitimately drunk. So I think Harry Lloyd does a fantastic job. And for anybody who's not familiar with Harry Lloyd, aside from this performance, he narrates the Dunk and Egg novellas in the audiobook A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and he does a real good job with that. So that's something I highly recommend experiencing if you guys want more Game of Thrones material. It takes place about 100 years prior to the events of A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones, and revolves around
Duncan the Tall.
Yeah, Sir Duncan the Tall, and a little squire named Egg, who may or may not be a king someday. You'll have to read to find out.
You'll have to read to find out.
Yep. So yeah, he shows up drunk, puts the blade to Dany's belly, and says he wants his crown. And
when he said he was gonna cut out the baby and leave it for him, and
he's done. At that point.
Yeah,
he's done.
At that moment, you're done with him. You're like, okay, let's speed this along.
Yeah, and Dany, her look, as soon as the sword's at her belly and he's threatening her child, her look just glazes over in a terrifying manner almost, where it becomes clear that all emotional connection is cut to Viserys. And Drogo tells him what he wants to hear in cryptic fashion, telling him the truth while also misleading him, which is great, saying he will give him his crown, the crown that men will tremble to behold. And that's all Viserys wants, is his crown, That's all I wanted. Great, cool. He pulls the swords away, he's all happy.
Maybe. He looked a little worried.
You think so? I don't think he was worried at all until...
No?
Nope, not until he was grabbed. Yeah, I thought he just seemed like just completely lost in his delusion. Yeah, because he's like smiling and sort of laughing. And I think being drunk is playing into it too. He's not realizing what's like probably really going to happen. But yeah, he gets grabbed. His arm is snapped. Hardcore sound effect, and dragged over. And as Drogo is collecting bits of gold and melting them in the pot, he's crying to Daenerys for help. She's so over it. She, like I said, she cut all ties to Viserys when he threatened her child. Same way she did with Jorah, essentially, when she found out that he was informing the crown, about her pregnancy. The same sort of glazed over look, and it's pretty interesting. And Viserys gets his golden crown in spectacular fashion, steaming and screaming, and and the sound when he hits the ground there, man. Wow.
Yeah, that thunk. That's interesting. What you're talking about is Dany and her glazed look and watching her brother die. That was her slave owner.
Yeah.
As well.
Exactly.
He was prepared to take her back, take master. His property back, and she'd been witnessing, the way that slaves are treated in the Dothraki, and people being used as property, and she's had her own little history with that in the 6 short episodes that we've seen her so far, and prior,
basically her whole life.
For her, this was her breaking of chains, right?
Yeah.
She finally gets out from under this guy that has been
goosebumps, basically,
shoving her nose into the ground for years. So that's a very liberating moment for her as well.
Yeah, she's earned her character, and now she's breaking her chains at this moment. And she grows her wings at the end of the season, you could say.
Absolutely.
Oh my god. So good. Great point there. This is the breaking of her chains.
Right.
I hadn't really considered it like that before. A really astute observation. Anything else you want to say about Viserys?
Glad he's gone.
Yeah, he was no dragon. Fire cannot kill the dragon. I think that pretty much sums it up. That and what Jorah says, that he was no more than the shadow of a snake. And at the same time, he's a really tragic character, because he's he's raised on this delusion, and he's trying to emulate his older brother, as we see Rhaegar in season 7 for the first time.
Oh, and what he looks like.
Viserys is totally biting his clothing style, his hairdo, his mantra to the best that he can, but in his own twisted Joffrey-esque way.
Right.
And because he was so little, he doesn't understand the morals of his brother or his brother's philosophies. He just understands what he symbolically represented in his mind, which is the dragon, the power, the beauty, the glory. And he's trying to emulate that. They don't know
what his brother gave up.
Yeah.
In the name of love and honor, and he gave everything up.
Yeah, all for a prophecy and a theoretical future, and for the better of mankind, which is something that Viserys would never do. Just shows you how similar and yet different the two characters are.
Right.
Which is pretty.
But also,
awesome.
I guess what I'm saying is he gave everything up. He was obsessed with the prophecy, but he gave up his wife and his kids and his son named Aegon.
Yeah.
For another woman.
For another woman, and for the potential of saving of the human race, for the greater good, by trying to birth the prince that was promised.
Right. Right.
Where he's willing to give everything that he holds dear for a cause, which is something that Viserys would definitely never do. Not even close. So as much as he wanted
had no cause.
Yeah, and even if he did, I don't think he would give anything for it, really. Yeah, he as much as he wanted to emulate Rhaegar, he didn't understand Rhaegar at all. which is the tragedy of Viserys, I would say. Really good way to end the episode is him getting what he finally deserved. You got any other notes from this episode you wanted to discuss?
I do. I have a few notes actually.
All right.
One of them I'll save for the last because it's a little longer. But we didn't go over Robert's hunt,
right? And
making the 8 and the disgustingness that is.
The disgustingness that I love.
And we saw a little an interesting side of Cersei in the beginning of this episode. What I found was really interesting was that she says, I should wear the armor and you the gown.
Right. Oh man.
Which is interesting to me because once she becomes queen, her dresses look like armor.
She's actually been wearing armor already in this season as well. She had a corset that was an armored corset that she was wearing, I think, during the it was like a golden one during her conversation with Robert last episode or the episode before.
Oh yeah, that corset. That's true.
So yeah, she's all about that life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but when when she blows up the sept at the end of season 6, that dress that she was wearing had a lot
armored
of
shoulder
militaristic elements to
definitely.
it.
Yeah.
And the fabric of her dresses, the entire season of season 7, it's this heavy quilted fabric that
Vader-esque.
looks like armor, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of like what Jon Snow and Ned Stark wear. Just out for battle or something. So it's interesting to me that she's already kind of preparing herself for what she would do, if she were to lead.
Absolutely. And this has been a lifelong thing with her. She always has thought that that she would be better holding a sword. She envied Jaime and wanted to be Jaime and that whole thing. And what is it? There's a scene, when is it? I think during season 2 when King's Landing is being sacked. She's in the room with all the people and Sansa, and she says, "I'd rather face 1,000 swords than be locked up in here with all of you doing nothing."
Right.
So just further shows us her mindset that she is just all about being that manly warrior person, and yeah, that's her.
One of
basically.
Probably the only respectable qualities that she has.
Yeah, she would love to be Brienne of Tarth, basically, which makes the love triangle between her and Brienne and Jaime even more interesting, because she's probably thinking like Jaime might even love me even more if I was like Brienne,
Yeah, probably, maybe. I don't know.
Hates Brienne for getting under Jaime's skin, and probably envies Brienne at the same time for her. Brienne's everything that Cersei wants to be. Big badass
because she's
woman.
Cersei is a lot more like her brother than she really thinks. They're both very cerebral, they're both very strategic, very smart when it comes to what they want and how to get it.
Yeah, definitely.
So, which is funny, I love it that she's yelling. She only yells. This is one of 2 times I ever recall her screaming or yelling throughout the entire series. Once, the second time and the last time I think I've heard her yell was when Joffrey died, right after he died, when she was screaming for Tyrion's head to be cut off. And I'm just now realizing this. The first time that we hear her scream was this episode when she's yelling at Ned about her brother and about, what her husband has done and the steps he must take, and is he an idiot? And she starts really yelling, and it's off-putting because she's more of a whisperer than anything else.
Yeah, and Robert's telling her, "Quiet, woman."
Wear it in silence or I'll honor you again.
Great line. I'm not for hitting women at all. But wow, that was awesome.
It was awesome.
So funny, man.
As a woman, I can tell you that was awesome.
Yeah. I shall wear this like a badge of honor.
Ugh, because and that's why it was awesome, because that was such a ridiculous line.
Wear it in silence or I'll honor you again.
Oh, Margatti.
Wow.
And then the other thing that we didn't talk about was also, the introduction of Osha.
Right. Oh, I love Natalia Tena. Even as this role, she's like scarily sexy to me somehow.
Oh, she's awesome. She's awesome. I mean, she'll always be Nymphadora Tonks to me, but
who's that?
She was from Harry Potter.
Oh, okay, I didn't know her name in that.
You should, yeah. She's a great character in that too. I just think the actress, you're right, is very, very good. But her as Osha, she did such a good job that I read somewhere that George R.R. Martin actually wrote the character differently, or wanted to write the character differently in the books after she was cast.
Oh, interesting.
And how she played the role.
Yeah, considering how she played it in the audio commentary, someone asked her what type of animal she was channeling at the scene where she shows up and they sort of try to take Bran captive. Mm-hmm. And I guess she was trying to channel a raccoon, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, she's fantastic.
I love that.
In
That's
this
awesome.
Role. Yeah, I think she's just gorgeous and awesome.
I wanted to talk about that scene more just because I love Osha so much, but I just didn't think that there was a lot to be said for anything that happened at Winterfell this episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we had Theon stepping up, showing how good he is at archery, as was hinted at in the last episode during the sigil lesson where Bran is being taught by Maester Luwin and Theon's shooting in the background.
Right.
I thought it was interesting because it's like the last moment where they get to be kids for a minute, where Bran is riding around on the horse with his new saddle and they're just kind of hanging out. And then it gets all serious and they never really have another moment of childhood again after that, any of them, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, and Theon's encouraging Robb to go to war, and Robb puts him in his place kind of dickishly, saying, it's not your job because it's not your house. And then Theon saves the day.
He said the same thing to Jon Snow, oh, you're not a Stark. It's like, dude, I get it. You're the Lord of Winterfell.
Yeah, just
it.
Chill, bruh. And wow, what a gorgeous forest that was. It's a really beautiful place where they're filming. Mm-hmm. There's so much good stuff.
But the last note that I had was actually, I don't know if you remember because it was a while ago, but the last time we did the podcast together, we were talking about, I asked you if you thought that the title sequence, the opening song, was slower than it is
right.
now.
I forgot to look into that. Did you research that further? I
did. And so, of course I did. That's my life is research. So first of all, they, the people that put together the title sequence, they always have the same, 4 elements, when they do the maps, right? They have King's Landing, Winterfell, the Wall, and then in quotes, wherever Dany is at the time. And that, and they put that in quotes because they always want to kind of show just how huge the world of Westeros and Essos is.
Huh, interesting.
So they start introducing, different elements and different castles. So let me go to title sequence. I have it up on my computer because I thought it was really interesting. They wanted to be able to put everything in of wherever they're going, because anybody that's kind of like just a bigger fan than just a viewer, a regular viewer, knows that you watch the opening sequence and it tells you kind of where you're going to go in the episode.
Yeah. Well,
they can't get as specific as they want to, so they always have to kind of take broader terms. Throughout the series, the title sequence continues to change and add locations depending on the locations visited in that particular episode. So they talk about the first season, how it's Vice, Dothrak, the Eyrie, and the Twins all appear, as well as these other 4 that are always shown. But as the show kind of got more involved, and bigger as the seasons went, they found that they couldn't get to all of it in 90 seconds, which is the allotted time for the title sequence, right? So I think that they actually did speed it up, because I went and I watched it from different seasons, just the opening sequence from different seasons. Just I kind of cherry picked a couple of them yesterday. And it gets faster. The tempo is actually a little faster, because I think that they're trying to get everything in that they possibly can.
In under 90 seconds.
In under 90
That's
seconds,
so funny.
Which is funny that they say 90 seconds, because the title sequence
like
for
3 minutes,
episode
right?
6 was 1 minute and 50 seconds.
Oh, all right. Wow. Yeah, maybe they shrunk it down to 90 later on or something. So what I can do, I can audio capture the title sequence from season 1 and overlay it with the audio capture from the title sequence of season 7 and compare the tempos.
Oh, that would be really, really cool.
Yeah.
Well, if you go to the Game of Thrones wiki, and you go to the title sequence, it actually breaks down by season how many times each of the places are shown per season. And then at the very end, it shows you kind of everywhere, right? And it has King's Landing, Winterfell, The Wall, all have 67 episodes. And then with the rarest place being, hang on, where is it? Being Pentos, which is only shown twice.
Interesting.
Next from there is Eastwatch, which has been shown 3 times.
Eastwatch.
So anyways, it's really interesting to see kind of like how the story has developed too, just by the opening title sequence and where they go.
I'll admit, I often completely space out during the title sequence and end up missing it pretty much entirely.
You know what? I do that for every show I watch, but it's something about this music where I want to like grab my Robin Aaron baton and start conducting the orchestra.
Big props to Ramin Djawadi. He's just an incredible composer, and I think that his work on this show rivals any work on any show that I'm familiar with, at least. Pretty amazing.
I love it.
Podcast Winterfell has a great section of their show. At least they used to have it all the time, where they did a thing called Clef Notes, and they would analyze the slight differences in the different themes of music in the show and what it may signify and what the music tells us on audibly before it actually happens and everything like that.
I love that. See, that's the kind of shit that I'm into, man.
Yeah, you should definitely go back and listen to any old episodes of Podcast Winterfell and go to the Clef Notes section. It's really cool.
Okay, I'm totally going to do that. I wrote it down.
Yeah, Matt does a really, really great job with that. We should also mention how Roz leaves Winterfell this episode, at least right outside Winterfell or whatever whorehouse she was residing at. And she heads for King's Landing. And Theon is interacting with her a little bit before she goes.
Oh gosh,
which is hilarious.
He's just so gross.
He's
you
so
know,
gross. Can I see it one more time? See what? Flips her
flips her a coin. I mean, he's just so gross.
For a flash, and I'm going to miss you.
She's just laughing the whole time.
I know.
Yeah, I liked her.
She totally Han Solos him there at that scene. You know what I'm talking about? Episode 5 of Star Wars is Han Solo's being lowered into the carbonite.
Oh. Yeah. I love you. I know.
I love you. I know.
I know.
So she totally Han Solos him. A second Star Wars reference for this episode, considering the elegance of the lightsaber and the moon door. And here, Theon, I'm going to miss you.
I know.
Which is hilarious. That pretty much wraps up all my notes. You got anything else you want to mention?
No. I don't know if anybody's interested in book chapters. I don't know if you've done it, but every episode goes over what book chapters it goes over. So if anybody's ever interested in that, you can always go to the wiki of Game of Thrones, not the Song of Ice and Fire wiki, but the actual Game of Thrones wiki. And for every episode, it'll tell you what chapters that it covers.
Oh, that's really cool.
Just in case anybody was ever interested in reading the chapters by episode.
Wow, that's really cool. Awesome. All right, so let's take a little break, and there's more to come. Stay with us, everybody. All right, we're back with news about Game of Thrones. Our first item is by HuffPost. Even this Game of Thrones star missed a tragic, subtle Easter egg. Game of Thrones Season 7 featured more reveals than there are swords in the Iron Throne. However, none was bigger than when HBO went all Ancestry.com on Jon Snow. The most recent season, fans finally learned definitively that Jon Snow is a Targaryen, and his real name is Aegon, or as the internet has deemed him, Aegon. That's my first time hearing that. That's funny. Now that we're privy to that info, peeps on Reddit noticed an apparent Easter egg, or rather an Easter egg, as in Aegon, the show planted years ago. The first word Shireen Baratheon taught Davos, Jon Snow's now loyal confidant, was how to read the word Aegon. Davos himself, actor Liam Cunningham, was recently out at New York Comic-Con promoting his new project, Philip K. Dick's Electric Dreams. And for anybody who's interested in Philip K. Dick, look up the podcast Philip K. Dick, The Man Who Remembered the Future, and you will have your mind totally blown. But HuffPo asked Liam Cunningham about the connection between Jon's real name and the first word Davos learned to read. He said, "Yeah, they're very good at that sort of thing," said Cunningham. "David Benioff and Dan Weiss plant little Easter eggs there if you want to see them. The fact that Shireen, Carrie Ingram, was part of this moment with Davos is kind of tragic, considering how much he cared for her and how much she was ultimately sacrificed, and how she was ultimately sacrificed by Melisandre. But despite the moment's significance, Cunningham told us he had no idea it would be so instrumental at the time." No, are you kidding me? I don't know what the hell is going to happen from one episode to the next. That's a testament to how good the writing is on that, too. After 7 seasons, people are still asking the same question they asked in Season 1. Who do you think is going to end up on the Iron Throne? From Game of Thrones to Philip K. Dick, here's the rest of our conversation with Cunningham. You're now in Electric Dreams, but is it true you used to also be an electrician? Somebody did make that connection. I never thought about it. I was an electrician, and now I'm in Electric Dreams. It's almost bizarre. Our next item...
I love Liam Cunningham.
Me too. His voice is great. Everything about him is awesome for this show. I think an example of perfect casting for the Onion Knight there.
He's without a doubt in my top 5 of favorite characters. I love him.
Yeah, he's definitely in my top 10, for sure. Our next article comes from Movie Pilot, and it's really, really sad. So brace yourselves, everybody. Game of Thrones actor Roy Dotrice has passed away. British actor Roy Dotrice has died at the age of 94. While he was arguably best known for his performances as Leopold Mozart in the critically acclaimed film Amadeus, the actor became even more renowned in his later years for his role on Game of Thrones. Dotrice played Halin the Pyromancer in the HBO series, the elderly man who aided Tyrion in his acquisition of Wildfire, which led to the Crown's victory over Stannis Baratheon at the Battle of Blackwater. In addition to his role on the Game of Thrones television series, Dotrice is also known as the narrator of George R.R. Martin's book series on which the TV show is based, voicing 223 characters. For the recording of just A Game of Thrones, the first audiobook in the series, Dotrice set a Guinness World Record for the most characters voiced by a single person. And for anybody who's listened to my Still Smug book talks, you probably are imagining or figuring out that Roy Dotrice is a huge inspiration to me. I really, really enjoyed his performances on the audiobooks. Total recording time of A Game of Thrones accumulated to 33 hours. Interestingly, Dotrice was initially cast as Grand Maester Pycelle before Game of Thrones had even begun. However, due to health concerns, the actor had to pull out of the role. During the second season of the HBO Juggernaut, he was then cast as Halin and appeared in 2 episodes. During the Ghost of Harrenhal, Helene shows Tyrion barrels of wildfire in his dungeon, and in Blackwater, he aids Tyrion from atop the Red Keep, giving him all the wildfire he needs in order to succeed and defeat Stannis' army. Dotrice's legacy extends beyond his Game of Thrones role. In addition to Game of Thrones work, Dotrice appeared on television quite regularly, having roles on Murder, She Wrote, Babylon 5, Wings, and Going to Extremes, as well as appearing on British soap operas Casualty and Doctors. He played the regular role of Jacob Father Wells on the original 1987 Beauty and the Beast, starring opposite Linda Hamilton and Ron Perlman. And if I'm not mistaken, George R.R. Martin wrote that TV series as well. In 1995, he voiced the character of Frederick during one episode of Batman, the animated series. Dotrice also did a lot of theater work and won a Tony Award for his role in the Broadway revival of A Moon for the Misbegotten. Rest in peace, Roy Dotrice.
Yes.
Yeah, really, really sad. I can't express how much I've enjoyed Roy Dotrice's performance in the audiobooks. And if you think about it, Roy Dotrice has done more acting in the A Song of Ice and Fire Game of Thrones universe than anybody else in the entire productions. Hundreds of hours of performances by Roy Dotrice narrating all the characters of the series and their inner dialogues, their conversations, just everything. The whole story is told by Roy Dotrice. In honor of him, please listen to the audiobooks and send me your email and I'll send you the first book for free, as long as you haven't received one from a friend before.
Nice. Very nice.
Really sad about Roy.
It is. It's nice, though. I mean, it's nice that he was 94.
Yeah.
That he left behind a huge legacy of work. You know, that's a lot more than a lot of people in that industry are afforded. So
yeah, and if anything, I think we should be really happy that he did live as long as he did. 94 is quite an accomplishment. So
absolutely
amazing. Rest in peace, Mr. Dotrice. Our next article is by Mashable. This Game of Thrones Season 8 casting just debunked one of our favorite theories. The Golden Company is coming into Game of Thrones in Season 8, and we know now who's leading it. And who isn't. Cersei ominously name-dropped the infamous sellswords in the Season 7 finale while telling Jaime about her evil scheme to defeat Daenerys and Jon, having tricked everyone into thinking Euron Greyjoy had abandoned her and run back to the Iron Islands, when in reality he was jetting off to Essos to hire some mercenaries to beef up the Lannister ranks. We've previously discussed how the Golden Company could end up working in Dany's favor instead of Cersei's in the final season, but a new piece of casting news throws a slight wrench into our theory. Game of Thrones fan site Watchers on the Wall reports that the Last Kingdom's Mark Rissman has been cast as Harry Strickland, now known in George R.R. Martin's books as the leader of the Golden Company. According to Watchers, Rissman's Spotlight CV and his agency's website reportedly confirmed the news, but any mentions of Game of Thrones have since mysteriously vanished from the sites, and HBO declined to comment on the rumor. A casting notice dug up by Watchers on the Wall back in September revealed that the show was looking for a mercenary between the ages of 35 and 50, which the fan site predicted to be Harry Strickland. That description is a far cry from the Harry Strickland presented in Martin's books. A wiki of Ice and Fire describes him as portly, with a big round head, mild gray eyes, and thinning gray hair that he brushes sideways to cover up a bald spot. But everyone knows that TV has slightly different standards for beauty than literature does. If Rissman is indeed playing Strickland, that debunks a popular fan theory that if and when the Golden Company shows up on screen, it will be led by Dany's smitten former flame, Dario Naharis.
Yes, that's my theory.
Ha!
I love it.
Very interesting. As we noted in our Golden Company explainer, Dario used to be aligned with another sellsword company, the Second Sons, but some fans have theorized that he could have gotten wind of Cersei's dastardly plot and embedded himself within the Golden Company to help out his Dragon Queen, paving the way for a pretty cool reveal. But that was before Dany hooked up with Jon Snow, her nephew slash lover from another brother.
Oh, gross.
Damn. And somehow, we're guessing Dario might not feel so loyal once he hears that Dany ditched him for another beardy swordsman. Our next article comes from The Hollywood Reporter. MIPCOM, Peter Dinklage, Charles Dance to executive produce Quasimodo. The Game of Thrones stars board the series, which is based on Victor Hugo's classic novel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and is one of the drama pitches unveiled by the new platform association Atrium TV. Game of Thrones star Peter Dinklage and Charles Dance have joined epic series Quasimodo, a new adaptation of Victor Hugo's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, as executive producers. The series, which Game of Thrones executive producer Frank Dolger is attached to produce, alongside the Frankenstein Chronicles, Tracy Schofield, and David Tanner, is being written by Ashley Farrow from The Living and the Dead. One of the first drama pitches to come out of Atrium TV, a new association of international streaming and telecommunication platforms that was launched earlier this year and is run by former Sony boss Howard Stringer and Jeremy Fox, chairman of British distributor DRG. Atrium's members include European telecommunications giants such as France's Orange, Deutsche Telekom in Germany, and Telefonica's TV outlet Movistar in Spain, as well as Asian streaming firm iFlix. The company's concept is to co-develop and co-finance high-end television for international platforms that they alone could not afford to bankroll. The next item on our list is from Time. The best Game of Thrones jokes about Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas getting engaged. Sansa Stark has a wedding coming up, and the internet has a lot of feelings about it. Actor Sophie Turner has announced her engagement to singer Joe Jonas on Instagram over the weekend, and Game of Thrones fans could not let a perfectly good opportunity to make some Sansa Stark jokes slip by. After all, Lady Sansa Stark of Winterfell has already been engaged twice, but neither one was by choice. Who is this man she has selected to be her husband, who may end up being the next King of the North, or at least Lord of Winterfell? Is the engagement merely a strategic alliance for land and soldiers? Was this engagement just another diabolical move by Littlefinger? Or was Sansa simply getting engaged because she couldn't let Jon Snow best her with his own engagement? Perhaps more important, though, is the question of whether the season of Game of Thrones will be delayed even further after Harrington and Rose Leslie's wedding. The internet has a few questions and took to Twitter to ask them. Yeah, I saw a funny comparison between Joe Jonas and Littlefinger, saying that Joe Jonas was young Littlefinger just trying to get in Winterfell. And
somebody mashed their two faces together.
Oh, God. That's hilarious.
It's scarily similar.
That's funny, man. All right, that's it for the news, and we will go to Raven's Calls.
R.
And we're back for Raven's Calls. You want to start, Kristen?
Sure. Caitlin Sidote. I'm so sorry if I said that wrong. Sidote.
Hey, Caitlin.
The crown that was promised.
Yes, it was promised, and we finally got it. Awesome to see that. Angelica, also, Caitlin, let us know how to pronounce your name. Just
please.
So we can get it correct in the future. I'd appreciate that. Angelica Garcia Decker says, "Ah, yes, crown for king." That's a great line from this episode, too. Drogo's broken Westerosi is always classic.
Becky Price. Hello, Becky.
Hey, Becky.
Says, Viserys getting crowned is potentially my favorite moment from the entire series. So does that mean that there's something wrong with me? No. No. There's nothing wrong with you. My absolute favorite death on the show. # fuck Viserys.
Yeah, the second comment there was from the Patreon group Rewatch. I added that in there, which is pretty funny.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Jillian Moreau says, the golden crown. And she has the crown emoji, head wearing a crown. This was one of my favorite moments in season 1. And would probably make my top 10 overall. Dany being able to give Viserys exactly what he had coming to him, and the look on his face when he realized how it was going down. I loved it, which was a nice recovery after seeing her eat the heart, which was just gross. I still shudder thinking about it. Also, Tyrion in that sky cell. Holy hell, amazing view, but not the way I'd want to wake up to it. Yes, definitely true.
I still like whenever they do shots like that where you're looking over something, I'm always like, no, that's enough. Okay, I get it. It's really high.
Yeah, seriously.
Mrs. Wendy Ott Eppers says, so much happened in just 6 episodes. It felt like we had Viserys around for so long, but not really. We meet Osha, love her character. Sky Cells, very cool.
Agreed. Yeah, it is funny how little we really got of Viserys. Probably a good thing. Kira Brown says, never have I ever watched a, quote, sex scene that just involved 2 people looking at each other. If Drogo looked at me that way, I would eat a horse heart while walking through fire and figure out how to make a horse drink salt water.
Totally. Kira, yes, I'm totally with you on this one.
I don't know what would terrify me more. Drogo looking at me that way or looking at me like he wanted to kill me. Either way, it would be bad.
I gotta say, you know what? I think that both of those looks were very much the same. And I think he got equal arousal and satisfaction from both instances. So there you go.
Probably right. That's hilarious.
James Gailunas. Do you know?
Not sure. Gailunas?
Gailunas. When I first started watching Game of Thrones, the first several episodes had me intrigued, but not hooked. Episode 6 is where that changed for me. When I saw that terrible things could happen to not only the good guys, but the bad guys as well, that was the moment I was hooked forever.
Awesome. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective. Yeah, it's totally true. Something really bad happened to this bad guy. And we don't get a lot of bad stuff happening to bad guys, but every once in a while they throw us a bone. Or throw Ramsay's dog a bone in the form of Ramsay.
Oh.
May Almardini says, she has her top 5 for us. She says, 5 and more slapping, always involving a Lannister. Because Robert says, what did the 5 fingers say to the face, Cersei? Slap. Number 4, Robert calls the Lannisters yellow-haired shits. As he looked at his kids. So funny.
I had the same thought on that one.
It's so great. Another little hint sprinkled in about Joffrey's true heritage as King Robert calls all the Lannisters yellow-haired shits. I don't know what happened between you and those yellow-haired shits, Ned, but listen to me. You put it all behind you. A funny little aside about that scene, too. Apparently, Mark Addy, who played King Robert, and Sean Bean, obviously, who played Ned, they went to school with each other, apparently, and have known each other for years, so it kind of added to the chemistry that they have between these 2 actors and their scenes together, which is a cool little side note. 3, Viserys realized he's not a dragon. You can't rule without fear, wealth, or love. I almost felt sorry for the big douche McV. Hey, don't associate mix with that V there as a McPherson. No, I'm kidding. It's cool. Danny loves the okay, and or Danny gives the okay, and he gets his crown of gold. Number 2, some characters are pushed into being assholes. Theon tries, but is constantly being put down. Jaime and Cersei are other good examples, although other characters are able to overcome the abuse, such as Jon and Tyrion, and are still good people. Number 1, the ongoing theme that being honorable, spelled the C-A way, is not always honorable. In this episode, Bronn saves Tyrion even though he doesn't fight with honor. Other examples, Jaime killing the Mad King. Sandor is not a knight, but he's more honorable than his big brother.
Dave Halberg.
Huh.
I like that name. That name sounds nice.
I don't know. Sounds like a weirdo to me.
Sounds like he's married to a really awesome girl.
Hey, Dave.
Love the introduction of Bronn. We briefly saw him at the scene at the Crossroads Inn, but the scene where he does the trial by combat for Tyrion is just such a great intro. He beats the other guy while wearing no armor and even has a pithy retort when he's told he does not fight with honor. No, he did.
Classic.
Just the first of many great Bronn lines. My husband has a love affair with Bronn and all his guy liner.
Yeah, seriously. Oh man, that's so funny. Thanks for writing in, Dave.
Yeah.
Emily Reeves says, "Yay, I'm all caught up. Loved the idea of the sky cell and that golden crown that was delivered as promised." Agreed. So awesome.
I totally agree.
Yeah, this is a classic episode.
Very old school Game of Thrones.
Very old school. Yes, indeed. We have a couple emails as well. You want to start with those, Kristen?
Sure. This is from Hannah and Florian. Hey, Duncan. We just want to say hello from Germany. We
Hello.
are big fans of your podcast. Yay, Germany!
Yeah.
Even though I rewatched Game of Thrones in German with my boyfriend, I kind of forced him to watch Game of Thrones. So for him, it was the first time watching the amazing show right before season 7 aired. I really enjoy listening to you guys every week. And now I'm excited for episode 6. I can't wait. We've had enough of Viserys, so it's time for his golden crown. Danke und der Winternacht, Hannah and Florian.
That's interesting. I wonder what that means. I'm going to have to look up that German. Thank you so much for writing in, guys. Hopefully,
I think der Winter not. It could be say winter is coming, maybe.
Oh, probably. Yeah.
Thank you. Danke is thank you.
Thank you, and winter is coming. That's awesome. Or maybe it's even winter is here. You'll have to look it up.
Ooh, I like that.
Our next email is from Archmaester Rennie. Hey, Rennie, how you doing? Oh, you can't answer me. I guess it's a kind of a question.
He's doing good. He's doing really well. He wanted me to let you know.
She, I believe. Hey, Game of Microphones gang. I'm really enjoying the Rewatch podcast, and I've been watching along and remembering how good Season 1 was. A Crown of Gold was a particularly good episode. My top 5? 5. Bran rocks. Yeah. 4. Viserys was no dragon. 3. Sky cells are terrifying. 2. Horse hearts are very unappetizing. 1. There is only one God, and his name is Death. And what do we say to Death, Kristen?
Not today.
Your loyal listener, Archmaester Rennie.
Thanks, Archmaester.
And of course we have a voicemail as well from Lady Anwen in New Zealand.
Oh, yay, New Zealand.
Hey Duncan and lovely co-host, it's Anwen here from New Zealand. Just wanted to call in and let you know how much I'm loving this rewatch of Game of Thrones Season 1. So great. A few things that I've just noticed over the last few episodes. Dany's hair getting more and more elaborate each week. She started out being all sort of fluffy and simple, and as she started to get her power, the braids started coming in and they're getting more and more elaborate. And obviously the end of season 7, it's quite extreme. So I just love that symbolism. It's really, really cool, especially given the Dothraki way of hair and plaits and everything showing power. So that's really awesome. I love Sean Bean. He's so good, and I've loved him since my Lord of the Rings days, and I think he's amazing in that role. Mark Addy is incredible. I love how he just goes from comical to really menacing at the drop of a hat. It's really cool. And things that I'd forgotten, like Sansa actually liking Joffrey at the beginning, and just how completely awesome Bron is. It's just wonderful. I'm really enjoying it. Thanks so much for the podcast. I really look forward to it every week, and look forward to hearing what else you guys have to say. Have a great day. Bye.
Lady Anwen, so nice to hear from you. Really love all your feedback there, and the audio quality is great as well. I think it's cool what you picked up about all of Dany's braids and how they get more and more intricate and extreme as she rises in power. And I too am greatly entertained by Mark Addy. He's just a hilarious dude. He does a lot of comedy roles usually too, so it's cool to see him in something like this. So glad you're enjoying the rewatch, Lady Anwen, and hopefully you'll stick through the whole thing with us. Looking forward to hearing more feedback from you soon. All right, that's our show, episode 48. Thanks for listening, everybody. And as always, thank you so much to Lara Willie Swink and Lisa Moreno for gathering our Ravens calls and news. You guys are a huge help every week, and I really appreciate all you guys do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Also, another big thanks to our guest host, Kristen, our co-host. Really good to have you back.
Well, it was good to be back, and I'll say it again. Anytime you want me back, you just let me know.
Oh yeah, you're in the rotation, so we'll have you back as soon as we are able.
Woohoo!
Definitely. And if you guys want to, you can call us, leave us a voicemail, or just send us your thoughts at 813-563-3739. That's 813-Joffrey.
If you'd like to write in, you can email us at game@podcastica.com.
Check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/GOM podcast.
And be sure to check out all the other great podcasts at podcastica.com, including the Walking Dead cast, which the premiere is this weekend. Woo!
Yeah, Walking Dead's coming back. It's going to be good.
Woo!
Excited. All out war, baby.
Can't wait.
One of my favorite story arcs from the comics. Hopefully it's awesome. And if you guys like the podcast, feel free to give us a like on Facebook and leave us an iTunes rating or review if you have a few minutes. During the off season, we're trying to produce content every week to help get the word out that our show exists, so we can have a increased following for season 8. So you guys can help doing that by drawing attention to the podcast by writing reviews, and we would appreciate it if you take a couple seconds to do that. So
Doesn't take long.
Yeah, thanks in advance.
Yeah.
Next episode, we'll be covering Season 1, Episode 7, You Win or You Die. Give it a watch and send us your thoughts. We really would love to read them on there. We love the interactions with all the listeners, and I think it's really cool having a platform where we're able to share everybody's thoughts and get everybody's perspectives on air for everybody else to hear. So we'd love your participation. All right, that's our show, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
I'm going to miss you, Kristen.
I know. And what do we say to death? Not today.